Well, I know you've got a bit more of a personal story in this way too, as well, in terms of a numinous experience, something that we've spoken about a little bit before, but do you want to give our listeners a bit of a sense of what that experience looked like for you?
Okay, and now this is a complicated thing to describe, but it's maybe my most deep and mystical story, if you like, but it's one that certainly influenced my psychological practice for the 15 years since, and it relates, not surprisingly, I suppose, to synchronicity, and it relates to a sense of some kind of noetic knowledge. But where it started off, it was around the time when my mother died, and I had quite a number of weeks to spend with my mother in hospital, and I wanted to give my mother something, or be able to give to her in some way to make it easier for her in some way towards the end of her life. Now, this is going to sound really weird, but there's something that I'd heard my mother say to me a number of times that I'd always resisted and ignored, but I thought I'm going to play along with this because I think that she would like it if I play along with this. And I said to my mum, who I knew likely only had a few weeks to live, probably wouldn't be leaving the hospital, I said, look, Mum, I know that you used to say that someone in our family will be famous. Now, Mum, I think it's me. I was pretending. I was just making this up. But I'd heard her say something like that before. And she looked at me and she said, you've got it. Because she used to say that her grandmother used to tell her that story. So anyway, I thought, well, now I've got to follow up with some kind of plausible way of following it through. So I just made this up on the spot. I said, look, Mum, I've been thinking of different kind of theories about how the mind works. There's something I've thought of called positive psychiatry. It's a bit like positive psychology about being optimistic and that, but it's more to do with a biological aspect and a mystical aspect as well. That I think that we have ways of influencing our mind and brain, our mind and body, that we've got receptors in our brain, that we can create certain kinds of neurotransmitters and open up these receptors in our brain or close them at will to change our brain chemistry. We've got a whole lot of plasticity in our brain chemistry. And look, I've been developing this theory and I think that's something that's going to, that's how I'll be famous. Again, of course, I'm just making all this up. It's just like stories. But my mother would be lying back in bed and she'd say, very interesting, very interesting. So I'd keep on embellishing these stories about how the neurotransmitters could work and receptors opening and closed. Well, anyway, through this time, I was becoming more speedy in my thinking, experiencing more numinous experiences, having massive synchronicity, which was very fortuitous in a way I'll describe later on. But one of the things with this is I started to feel a bit more, but more appear hypermanic to other people. Now, in a way, I was deliberately inducing a hypermanic-like state because I won't go into it now, but there were many, many challenges at the time at work and elsewhere, and I felt that I needed to get more done in a certain time than I'd ever normally be able to. I'd need to work very hard, think quick, be creative, and also not need as much sleep. And I thought, okay, in the past, I know I've achieved a lot when I've been under a lot of pressure and I've entered a certain kind of state of mind. It looks a bit hypermanic, but it works for me. It's quick and it helps me be effective. Okay, I'll let that run, but I'll only let it run if I keep on experiencing synchronicity. And I'll mention just one example of how this seemed to work for me. I got this harebrained idea that there was a way of solving a major problem we had in our work practice. We needed to get a builder to do renovations on our new building. And we'd tried for months and nothing was getting anywhere. So I suddenly had this idea of a builder that I could get in touch with. But it was a strange thing to do because that builder 2 years earlier had quite a conflict with me, and you'd normally think I wouldn't get in touch with that builder. Well, I thought, synchronicity tells me he's come into my mind in a certain way, I'll get in touch with him. Anyway, get in touch with the builder, ring him out of the blue. There was a pause for a second or two that I wasn't surprised when he answered the phone. But then he said to me, I'm glad you've rung me. I've been thinking of you the last couple of days. I've been thinking I'd like to build something for you. In a sense, problem solved. I met with him, and when we met, he said, look, I've wanted to build something for you. I'll build your building at cost. Problem solved. Now, there were half a dozen really major, significant challenges I had at the time that seemed to be miraculously helped in some way. And I felt it was partly to do with the state of mind that I had at the time. But I've been talking about this kind of theory I had, and I was going to let all of that go after my mother passed away, which she did within a few weeks. But after this experience, a number of friends had been concerned. They thought that I might be psychotic at the time. But I thought, no, this was very effective. I knew that I'd managed a number of things well. And funnily enough, I'd started to believe these theories that I told my mother. So I thought, okay, a day or two after I felt I'd achieved all that I needed to, I thought I'm going to close down this process. So I didn't know at first how I was going to close it down, but I knew I was going to be able to, and I did it by looking into the sun. One morning, I saw the sunrise at dawn through curtains, and I thought, if I focus on the sun, if I focus on being grounded in my body, I'll become completely normal again. I won't be hypermanic at all. And that's what happened within a couple of hours. And within a couple of days, nobody thought I was hypermanic.